Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. As you know, I am a lover of luxury and I've worked for Saks Fifth Avenue in the early stages of my career. Absolutely phenomenal business, great experience. You get to understand the heritage of some amazing brands. And talking about luxury, Aditya Birla has signed up Galeries La Fayette, a French department store with a more than 150 years legacy to open in India. Now, I've done a lot of videos on department stores, not necessarily luxury department stores. So this one will be more focused around the luxury market and what is the potential for bringing a department store on the likes of Galeries La Fayette to a country like India. So when you talk about luxury legacy department stores, few of them come to mind. Harrods, Harvey Nichols from the UK, you have Bloomingdale's, Saks Fifth Avenue from the US, and you've got Galeries La Fayette from France. When you talk about taking a department store out of its country, remember that a department store like a Saks Fifth Avenue or a Bloomingdale's or a Harrods for that matter is conceived around the heritage and culture of the country that they reside in. So when you're talking about uplifting or rather uprooting a department store on these lines and bringing it to a country that is pretty alien to the culture and heritage of the parent country, that's when it's going to be a challenge of how you localize something that has a more international appeal. Yes, it is true that Indians are well traveled, mainly to US and UK, so they will resonate more with department store brands that are from those countries. I have not been able to understand what was the thought process of Aditya Birla trying to bring a department store brand like a Galeries La Fayette to India. First of all, I believe that the brand equity itself in India is going to be very low. Not many people would have heard of Galeries La Fayette. In terms of department store offering, other than the Gourmet department, which I think is pretty spectacular if you visited a Galeries La Fayette, there is nothing else really to write on about. Thirdly, a department store that is going to be in India. Remember that as of today, more than 70% of the business in India is still dominated in the ethnic categories. And also the cost of doing business in India because of imports and duties is extremely high when you're talking about luxury goods. The good news that I've seen over the past couple of years of me moving to India is that brands have become more accessible in terms of price points in India versus your immediate markets of the UAE, Hong Kong, Thailand. Let's also include Singapore in that mix. But when you talk about opening a department store which is on the lines of 50 to 80,000 square feet, you may brag about having a box of brands. And Galeries La Fayette boasts of over 200-300 brands in their portfolio. But what can you do with 200-300 brands in a 50 to 80,000 square foot store? You talk about providing a curated experience, hand-picking certain items. Again, those items are a risk because you're talking about picking it to an audience that you really don't know. When you talk about luxury in India, you're talking about alcohol, you're talking about luxury cars, you're talking about handbags, probably even jewelry. If you walk into any of these traditional high-end department stores, you're talking about having fragrance and cosmetic accessories and handbags generally on the ground floor. Then you move into your designer floor, which is basically going to be ladies. You're going to have a separate floor for men's, a floor for kids, for home. That's your traditional mix. I don't understand what is the benefit of a department store like Galeries La Fayette to the Indian market. I mean, if we look at the whole scenario pretty critically, what you'll see is that if you want to make something of a splash, you will have to sign up the top 5 luxury brands. Which are those brands that come to mind? Louis Vuitton, Dior, Chanel, Gucci, Tiffany. These are brands which are already spoken for. Most of the brands that I mentioned are either on a mono-branded format who have opened their own subsidiaries in India or they are with Reliance Industries. Now, to be able to draw certain foot traffic into your stores, you're talking about having these key brands in your store. You need to do it whether you like it or not. Which means if you bring in these brands, you're already talking about operating at diminished margins. Secondly, when you talk about having all these brands in the framework of a department store, you're going to have the size of your stores pretty constricted. Those boutiques are not going to be as big as if you walk into a mono-branded store, which will have the full range, breadth and depth of assortment. Secondly, when brands talk about launching any of their key marketing activities for the season, they will always have those must-have items or those high fashion items launched in their own boutiques versus a department store. So for me, if I was seriously exploring a luxury department store concept in India, I would have gone with an Indian homegrown department concept. I would have turned the entire business of luxury on its head. I would have spoken about having brands that were more Indian-centric. I'd look at an aggregation of a Tarun Talani, a Sabyasachi, a House of Anita Dongre, a Manish Malhotra. I'd build my business in India on the back of these designers. These would be the designers that I have. I'd have a mix of about 50% ethnic brands and 50% Western brands, something that you will never see in any department store worldwide. I would also add in a jewelry department, which would again consist of high-end jewelry. So I'd pick up brands like Zoya, like Cartier, and I'd have this mix of people who are very well acclimatized to the Western concept of what designer is, which will be more subtle, more European, more toned down. And I'd also keep the Indian designers who are more into bling. So I'd have to strike the balance between these two. Definitely what I would do if I was opening a department store is I would lead in with the premium high-end top 5 designer brands in the Western wear world. To complement the Western brands, a set of Indian ethnic brands with the high-end designers that we have in India. And then what I would do is I'd scale it from there. I would open probably a jewelry department store also on a secondary level so that I could draw in those customers and get in the high ticket items. When you're talking about opening a department store of this kind in India, you're talking about nothing less than a turnover of 200 to 250 crore a year from a single store. So that is why I believe that Aditya Birla bringing in Galeries La Fayette is not necessarily something that makes sense in my head. Aditya Birla as a brand has gone on an acquisition spree, especially in the ethnic space, and I think that is why they need to leverage the ethnic part of their business and coming up with an Indian model of a department store that will talk about the heritage of India, that will talk about what luxury is in India, about the heritage of the Maharajas. Delhi has got so much of history behind the Mughals. So you've got to think of how you're going to take this great culture, assimilate it into your story of the department store. Be Indian, buy Indian, and that started from the Gandhian era. This is essentially a chance for people who have deep pockets to do that. Create something that is Indian, create something that will speak to the world. And that is why I believe that a concept like Galeries La Fayette is not necessarily the concept you want to bring to India. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you at the next one. Ciao.